Hey guys, welcome back to the First Methodist Shreveport podcast. I'm here with the one and only Lee DuCote,
Thank you.
our new leader of family and men's ministry.
Yes. Yeah.
How you feel about that?
Love it.
Good.
Absolutely love it. Yeah.
The men's steak dinner went off without a hitch, so
Always does every year. Yeah. And this year was fun though because we had a professional treasure hunter that came, Michael Helm,
the preacher digger.
The preacher digger. Yeah. And nobody knew really how big he really was until he started speaking and talked about some of the things he had found.
Mm-hmm.
They were really fascinated. So
I'm sure.
yeah, he had a lot of Q&As.
Yeah.
So.
Well, good. So
Yeah.
I feel like you're in there with Ashley Goad as far as people who have a story that needs to be written.
Oh gosh.
And so I'm excited to go over all this and share it with everybody on the podcast, just because your first few years here, I remember just like talking to you, and every time I talked to you, I'd get like a little piece of information, and it was just like, how does all of this tie together? Because I mean, I think everyone's going to see like it's a wild story, and I love hearing it. And so whenever you're ready, let's hear the backstory of Lee DuCote, the origin story.
Yeah, well, born and raised in Shreveport, North Shreveport, born to a farming family. My dad was a many-generation farmer, and so grew up in a Christian school. Grew up Methodist, went to a small church in Gillum, Louisiana. And but they didn't have a youth group, you know. So when I was 15 and able to drive, because you know back then you could drive at 15, I joined the Trinity Heights Baptist Church, and we were already going to Trinity Heights Christian Academy. And so I joined because they had a youth group. So I moved from Methodist to Baptist and fell in love with it. And I had fun in high school.
Yeah.
I enjoyed my high school a little bit too much. Stayed in some trouble. But the church kind of helped me, the church really helped me find a path, which was ministry. I surrendered to ministry as a senior at Trinity Heights Baptist Church. So,
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So you knew, like, at that point as a senior in high school that you were going to pursue some kind of just what God was calling to you wherever you were?
Yeah. I figured it would be student ministry, and, I mean, I tried to run from it for several times, but, you know, my first student ministry job was in 1989 or 90, so it's been a while.
Goodness.
So, and we just moved to men's ministry and family ministry this past year. So, and family ministry still gives me the opportunity to still be in with students too.
Yeah.
It just encompasses everybody.
Yeah, I guess so, because students and kids are part of the family.
Yeah. So it's a lot of fun.
Nice.
Yeah.
So you graduate high school.
So
Feel
graduated.
this calling on your life.
Yeah. So graduated high school, and Dad did not want me to be a farmer. He was adamant about not taking up his profession because of just stress. You know, farmers have so much stress they deal with on God's timing of weather. You know, in Louisiana, we all know that changes on a daily basis, if not half a day. But so I went to college and was never a studious person, and I didn't do well in college at all. Matter of fact, I made some bad grades my first semester and was put on probation.
Oh, wow.
And so Dad was paying for college too, and he's like, if you're going to make bad grades, I'm not going to pay for you to go to college. And so me being that, you know, old teenager that knew everything, knew more than Dad
As
did,
they do.
right? Yeah. As Dad got me a job on Wake Island out in the mid-Pacific and sent me out there to grow up out in the Marshall Islands. And so
How did he get you that job?
He had a friend that was a foreman of this company. And so it was a military support company. So it was construction that supported military. I couldn't join the military because I had knee surgery that prevented me from joining the service. And so this was kind of that opportunity for me to give back.
Yeah.
And so moved out there, did not know what I was getting into when I went. Thought it was going to be construction work, but we landed on the island. We weren't on the island more than 2 hours. The commander came in and met with us. There was 28 of us.
Are you all like in high school?
No,
or?
I was the youngest.
Okay.
So these were tradesmen. They were electricians, plumbers, carpenters, a couple of engineers. You know, then there was some labor, and I was one of the laborers. And so the commander came in and set everyone down and said, you are here for construction work indeed, but we're also going to be doing something that you'll be sworn in anything that you communicate outside the island, we will read. And so we weren't, back then, there wasn't really, we couldn't call.
Mm-hmm.
And so so they read all of our letters. And so we actually built Operation Starbird, which was long-distance Patriot missiles.
Good.
Um,
A 19-year-old building these.
Yes. So 27 of us were very upset that they were kidnapped. Me being the 28th was like, this is awesome. This is like the best paid vacation I've ever been on in my life. I mean, it was beautiful, beautiful islands. Mm. And so, but we did build out there too. We built facilities and missile pads and bunkers and storage buildings, and we did build a lot of stuff out there. And so, yeah, it was awesome. So
that's insane. Just to think, going from high school, a little bit of college, and then just dropped into military construction on an island in the Pacific.
Yes, yeah. And so when I finished my contract up out there, I was given another contract to move to Guam. And that was a very long contract. It was an 8-year contract. Whoa. And so I was coming home, and I had 30 days back here in the States. And Guam is U.S. owned, so you didn't have to spend any time back in the States once I went. So once I went, I was gone. And so when I came back, my wife now, Alicia, we were friends before I left to go to Wake Island. And when we came back, within that 30 days, we started dating.
Oh, nice.
And I just tore up my contract and said I wouldn't be returning. I was going to stay home.
So had you signed the contract, or had they just offered it to you?
I might have signed something, but it was breakable. But it was offered to me. I guess contract might be a little bit too strong of a word, but this was offered to me. Okay. And so I backed out basically and stayed home.
Oh, most romantic thing I've heard today.
Yes, yes. Well, it is only 10:30.
It only gets better.
Yeah, yeah.
Nice. So you and Alicia start dating?
Yeah, we started dating. She was still in high school. And so I went to college here, tried college again. Mm-hmm. And
is it LSUS or Centenary?
Northwestern Nursing School.
Okay.
Yeah. So my family's full of nurses. And so my oldest sister had just finished Northwestern. And so I started and made it a semester and just decided I'm not an academic person. It's not for me. And so being in construction and in a few other things, that's kind of where I did while Alicia was still in school. Yeah. And worked construction. And then, but I had a love for hunting and fishing. I mean, who doesn't in Louisiana, right? Mm-hmm. And so just shortly after she graduated high school, we opened up our first hunting and fishing store in Bossier City. It was called Louisiana Outdoor Sports. So I went straight into the retail industry. And nice. Young and knew it all.
Wait, so how old were you at that point?
Early 20s.
Goodness.
Yeah.
So you had your dad was a farmer. Did you have any business experience or?
The only retail experience I had was in the summers that, so I've scuba dived all my life. I got certified at 9 years old. And so in high school, I would work for the dive shop from time to time. And to be honest with you, when I got fired on the farm, I'd go work on the dive shop. When I'd get fired from the dive shop, I'd go back and work on the farm. So, but both, my dad was very good to me. I mean, and wanted me to have that experience as well. And then the owner of the dive shop was Paul Oberle, and he was like a father figure to me as well. And so I did get that retail experience from there.
Okay.
But I really didn't have any business experience when I opened my store. None whatsoever. And
which is even more impressive for what comes next.
Well, yeah, it's and my bookkeeper, I had to hire a bookkeeper to help me keep things straight, and they always said that, I had a much more expensive education of just doing it versus going to college and learning it. So,
Yeah. Nice. So you've got the first hunting and fishing store.
yeah. So we had Louisiana Outdoor Sports for. I'd have to sit down and add up the years. We opened one up in Vivian, too. This is when online shopping was starting to get big, or was starting to come into play.
Okay.
And so we were building a online hunting and fishing store online, and it would have been one of the earliest ones. It wouldn't have been the first one, but it would have been early. It wasn't a plug and play either back then. It was, we had to hire a programmer, and it was pictures and programming and coding, and there was a lot to it.
Yeah.
And so we were in the middle of that, and some young guys walked in the store and said they'd love to be an owner of a hunting and fishing store. And so
Wow.
I threw them a price, and they bought it. And
Really?
we stepped out.
And how many locations was it?
It was 2 locations.
Okay.
Yeah.
But still, that's impressive.
So, yeah.
Much less, or for the fact that the first one survived, and then not even like how many years, or well, how many years do you think y'all had the first one?
8 years, probably. Yeah.
That's impressive. 'Cause, I mean, most local businesses like maybe last 10 years.
Yeah. It was making it. It was doing well.
Mm-hmm.
As a matter of fact, during that time when we had the store, I was still concerned about health insurance and things. I mean, retail business, first of all, if you own a retail store, you're the one that's doing everything.
Yeah.
And so there'd be long hours. And Alicia spent long hours. She was in school at this time, too. So she was going to school full-time at Centenary, and we were doing the store full-time, above full-time. And so I decided, I had a lot of friends that were in the fire department in Bossier City, and so I got on the fire department. And so that was to help with income, but also benefits. The benefits were tremendous. And so I actually left the store for several months while being trained in the fire academy, and Alicia ran the store. And it was more profitable when she ran the store than when I did. So even our bookkeeper, when we came back, he was like, you just need to work for Alicia because she can make a profit. You give everything away, so. But that's where I got that's when I became a firefighter too. Okay. So when we did sell the store, it was not like I was out of work. I just went straight into the fire department full time.
Yeah. So in the fire department, were you like an EMT or?
I was EMT, okay. Yeah, EMT firefighter for Bossier City.
Nice.
During that time, while I was there, Ferreira Fire Apparatus in Baton Rouge reached out to me with my retail background, sales background, and asked me if I was interested in selling fire trucks. And it was much more lucrative than the fire department. And so I bowed out of being a firefighter and went straight in as a salesman selling fire trucks in East Texas and North Louisiana.
That's crazy. So how do you sell a fire truck? Because, I mean, whenever I think of a fire department, I think the city just buys or just has a fire truck. So are you selling to the city, or are you selling to the fire department?
It's all sales. You're manipulating the fire chief in that your truck is better than everybody else's.
Okay.
And then the fire chief makes recommendations. It's all a bid, though. So It's all government. It's all bidded. They take the top bids or however those things work out. But I did well at it. I did sell some trucks. But, yeah, I would drive a fire truck up to a fire department and say, chief in. Chief's there, goes, hey, come look at this truck I got. I mean, looking back on it, it was kind of funny.
Yeah, I'm sure. There's a lot of things I think about your life, and I just can't imagine, like, what you were thinking at that point in your life, or just...
Yeah. It was fun. I enjoyed it. Yeah. But in the midst of it, they started having me travel travel a lot. And so I was flying all over the United States. I was starting to fly to Asia and doing work there. And so there was things that were taking me away from home. And I'm a homebody and a husband and a dad too. We had Dylan at this point. And so I just said, I can't travel anymore. This is more than I want. And J.T. Wallace, who was the fire chief at Bossier City, moved to the parish. And I was a volunteer fire department I was a volunteer for Benton Fire Department, North Bossier Parish. And so I told JT, I'm tired of traveling. I just don't want to do this. And so he said, why don't you come on and be our assistant chief here at this department?
Oh, wow.
And so I left selling fire trucks and went straight into being an assistant fire chief.
Jeez. It's quite the move.
So it was quite the move. Yeah.
And so how was, you said that ministry was something you accepted whenever you were coming out of high school, and you said it's been woven through all this stuff. So are there any, I guess, how is ministry impacting your life, or how is it being displayed at this time?
So I've always been in some type of ministry, whether it's vocationally or volunteering.
Mm-hmm.
And so during these years was all volunteering. With the exception, I did have a small paid youth job in Monroe.
Yeah.
But the only time I really stepped out of ministry is when I went to Wake Island. Because, I was living on an island with a bunch of grown-ups. There was no student ministry. They all acted like kids, though, but, still.
Mm-hmm.
So Alicia and I, we both volunteered for First Bossier. And so Justin Hagler was the youth director there. I know somebody that was in the youth group there. She's giggling in the background. And so we volunteered there. And so we were with high school for a few years. I don't remember my timeline very well, but we were with high school for a few years. And then Justin said, hey, would you do our college group? And so Alicia and I jumped in the college group along with a couple other volunteers. And we did that for a few years before we moved to Franklin, Tennessee. So that picks up when I was assistant fire chief. I actually left that position to move to Franklin, Tennessee. And so, which was a big move for us. And so, yeah.
So what brought you to Franklin?
We were in Sunday school. So one cool thing about being at First Bossier is though we taught college and we led college and we had a college Sunday school class, we were also able to go to our own college, our own Sunday school class. And so Jeff Luce was our teacher for that adult class. And we were there one Sunday, it was in April, and a good friend of ours was on the city council there in Bossier, and he announced his Sunday school class that he and his family were moving to Atlanta, Georgia. And they all clapped for excitement, but then, we're like, oh, we're sad that you're leaving us. And so when they got into the lesson, I leaned over to him and I asked him, I said, why are you moving to Atlanta? And he said, I just feel like it's time for a different scenery. I want to get my kids to be have more culture given to my kids and live in a more diversified area. And so that just put a spark in me about, wow, I'd love to give Dylan the opportunity to see parts of the country.
Yeah.
And so we basically walked out in the parking lot. Alicia was working for Shreveport Wellness Center at this time.
Okay.
And she was, I can't remember if she was finishing her bachelor's or finishing her master's, or if she was in her master's degree. But she was in the cardiac rehab for Shreveport, and she had been laid off with a lot of other people. And so when we were walking out in the parking lot, I just asked her, I said, hey, you want to move to Tennessee? She said, okay.
And it's so funny that Alicia is the academic person that she is, marrying someone who, and it's so funny that you say you're not an academic, because I think anyone who knows you knows that you are very passionate about researching stuff that you care about.
Yes, but I also graduated with like a 2.2. I made grades to play football,
Okay.
So, but yeah, she's the academic. She's still in school. She's in the middle of her doctorate program right now.
It's impressive.
Yeah.
So impressive.
It is.
So she said yes to Tennessee?
Said yes to Tennessee, and in October we were living in Franklin, Tennessee. I went back to selling fire trucks for someone there. She had found another job until she had found a temporary job until she was moved into a health and exercise science job, which was her major, which she ended up working for the YMCA of Middle Tennessee.
Okay.
And so we lived there for almost 10 years.
Wow.
And so really got to dive in even thicker in ministry there. So we volunteered for the youth group there. And then in the midst of volunteering, our middle school director left, and they asked me, would I intern until they found somebody? Which I said yes.
Yeah.
We loved it, and we loved middle school, and to this day we still love middle school ministry. And
which is a special love. It takes a special person to be passionate about middle schoolers.
It does. But and so I interned for almost 2 years, and I finally was like, y'all are getting y'all's money worth out of me. Y'all got to hire somebody, and they finally did.
Yeah.
So, but it was good, and so
nice.
Yeah.
And so they hired someone on at Franklin to be the middle school minister. And so are you still working selling fire trucks in Franklin?
So in the midst of selling fire trucks, our company was sold.
Okay.
And I had the option of, I didn't have an option. To stay with them, I'd have had to move to North Georgia.
Oh, wow.
Which we didn't want to. We loved Franklin. We loved our community. We loved our church. We weren't going to leave. Alicia had a great job, by the way. She was doing fantastic at her job. And so we said we would stay. And so a friend of mine worked for a construction company and said, hey, I need somebody to install exterior shutters, operable shutters. And they told me what they would pay me, and I was like, well, that's really good money. I'll do that. Well, that led into me starting my own shutter manufacturing company. And so I did that. So I opened up, it was called LD Shutters in Franklin, and we sold for probably 6 states. We had sales reps and installers and a pretty decent-sized manufacturing facility there in Franklin. And so did that and still did ministry. And actually, it's funny how things work out and how God works things out. Is I've spent more of my life volunteering than I have been paid to do ministry. And it's so much more special when I had the opportunity of, I could leave in the middle of the day and go do something ministry.
Yeah.
I wasn't bound to work. And was never married to any of my jobs or any of the businesses I owned.
Yeah.
And so I always had some people would say luxury. I would just say God's time of going to go do ministry type work, whether that was going up to high school to meet with kids or meet with parents or whatever.
So would you have called yourself like an entrepreneurial person, or?
Yes, at one time. I think I was.
Yeah.
Because we owned 3 different businesses during our time together. And so, yeah, there was a lot of entrepreneurship.
Was it ever like
involved in that.
For money, or was it all just like passion projects or things that you knew you could do well at, or maybe do better than somebody else was doing and you wanted to pursue it?
Yeah, I never chased money.
Yeah.
I never chased the dollar. I loved woodwork. I love building. All of our shutters were made out of redwood that we had shipped in from California.
Oh, wow.
And so I loved the work of that. I loved the craftsmanship. When it came to the retail business, I was in sales, but I didn't think I was in sales. I loved hunting and fishing. And so I got to share that with other men and women of coming in the store and speaking to them from experience of this would work, that would work. I mean, we had a couple thousand square feet of fishing baits alone. And my joke, but it's true, is that 95% of these baits catch fishermen. Only 5% of them catch fish.
Right.
But I had to have them all so the people would spend time in there and we would have time to visit or whatever. But yeah, only 5% of fishing baits catch fish. All the rest of them just catch fishermen.
Okay, so the hot take, which of those 5% actually catch fish? What's your favorite fishing lure?
Well, for Louisiana, it would be a worm, and it would be a tequila sunrise worm. And every fisherman know what I'm talking about when I say tequila sunrise. And if they go to a rattle trap, they'll know that it's a blueback or a blackback silver rattle trap. But LSU purple and gold tiger stripe rattle traps don't catch fish. They catch fishermen.
Might look a little unnatural in the water.
Yes, yeah, exactly.
Man,
I mean, the
too
fish
funny.
could be Arkansas fans, you know. So, but,
Arkansas transplants.
yes, yes, yeah. So, but yeah, everything we've ever done, and you know, has been out of passion. We just really never chased the dollar.
Yeah.
And so we appreciated the times we were broke. You know, and when we did have money, we didn't know what to do with it, so we just spend it and become broke again. You know, parents don't like this they don't like this advice from me, but it is very true. I always tell our kids, our older kids, you know, as a junior or a senior in high school, you could be dating your spouse right now. And don't go to college and say, I'm going to finish college before I get married, or I'm going to get that job before I get married. Don't do any worldly thing based to do for your marriage. Get married now. And I tell kids, get married young and get married broke.
Yeah.
Just suffer. Because when you get older and you lose stuff or you become broke again or whatever that is, you have the respect for it because that's where you started.
100%.
Yeah.
I know we've talked about it recently, and I wholeheartedly agree with that because my wife and I got married at 22 and 23, and we obviously did not have a dime to our name. We had a one-bedroom apartment and a quadplex next to Bird is where we started out, and then we lived with some friends and were able to get on our feet after that. But I don't want to say we made bad decisions. There have been things that happened that led us to get into debt, and we're in a place where we're having to dig out of it now, and we're much more comfortable, and we aren't resentful at all for what we're having to go through as far as like scaling our life back, because like you said, that's how our life started. Like we knew we are capable of doing this and like going without because that's how we started.
Yeah.
And so I think that's great advice to say, you know, people are, I think sometimes, and even then, like people were stunned that we were 22 and 23 getting married, and they might not have said it to our face, but they might have thought that it wasn't going to work out, and we were too young. But I think you're definitely right that it's in those formative years that it just molds you together, because you're having to go through, like you said, suffering together, and you're having to go without, and you realize you don't need things to make you happy in your marriage. You just need that other person and the willingness to go through it together.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, we always are coaching these young adults and I call, you know, seniors in high schools young adults too, is we're all constantly trying to coach them into being a part of a Christian community, being part of a church, being a part of a parachurch, whatever that is. Make sure God is first in your life. And then when you marry broke and you're going through the pain, you've always got God right there. I mean, He's the brightest thing you'll have, the most, you know, beautiful thing that you'll ever have. And you'll lean on Him more during those times. You know, we go to the brokest parts of this world, and they're the strongest, faithful parts of any. For example, in the United States, a lot of people don't know this, but the biggest percentage-wise, the biggest area that gives the most money out of their own pockets for non-for-profits or for churches or for missions or whatever, the area that gives the most money is the Delta region. It's the Mississippi, Arkansas Delta region. It's the poorest, one of the poorest parts of our country too.
Really?
So our poorest part of our country gives the most percentage-wise.
Goodness.
Yeah. So when you don't have anything, you know, it's yeah. So parents don't like me to say that.
I think it's great advice, though.
Yeah.
I definitely tell our kids that. So anyway, Franklin.
Yeah. So we were living in Franklin and doing ministry, doing our job. Oh, I sold that company, and somebody wanted it more than I did. And at this time of our lives was the first time that we felt we were being pulled to full-time ministry. We felt like that our time of being entrepreneurs was over. It was time to bow out of that and give fully to ministry. Alicia had been recruited into an organization called Young Life, and she was recruited by students. Yeah, so it was really a cool thing. So we were involved in Young Life, and they came to us and said, hey, we have 3 areas in our region that could use you. Would you be willing to move? And those areas were Joplin, Missouri, Heber Springs, Arkansas, and Laurel, Mississippi. And so, which none of them sounded attractive to me. But we loved the students, and we did feel like it was time. Our time had ended in Franklin. And so I had relatives in Joplin, Missouri. And I said, you know what, let's check out Joplin, Missouri, because that might be a place, since we have relatives there, that we could go and serve. And so I hung up the phone with them the next day. If you know your history, Joplin was hit with an F5 tornado that following day. Wiped out the town, the schools. I mean, it just destroyed everything. Well, they called me back and they said, you're not going to Joplin. And so it's either Heber Springs, Arkansas, or Laurel, Mississippi. And I looked on the map, and Heber Springs was by a lake. I said, we'll go there and visit. And so we fell in love with the area. And so we picked up and moved to Heber Springs to do Young Life full time. And got involved heavily with the school. I was a chaplain for the high school team. Alicia was her title, I don't even know what her title was, but she worked with the football team as well, and her job was to injury prevention was basically her job. And so, but while working for Young Life and working with students and everything, is when I got this great idea that I would write a book. As you remember, I had graduated with a 2.2. I failed junior English and had to repeat junior English my senior year while doing senior English.
That is crazy.
Yeah. So I decided to write a book, and everybody laughed at me about wanting to write a book. But my thought was, I talk to kids, and they hear 2% of what I say. But yet they knew who Baltimore's first cousin's former roommate's dog's name was. From reading Harry Potter. And so I was like, well, fine, I'll just write a secular story with about demons, about a kid that can intercede on demons on behalf of his friends. And it dealt with 3 dimensions: the dimensions of God, the dimensions of spirits, and the dimensions that we live in. And so it was very, very in depth. The Key of Solomon was involved in this, and demonology, and so there was a lot of research, a lot of darkness that I had to research into to write this book.
Was it ever hard for you?
It was. It took me well over a year to write this book, and so there was times where Alicia would come to me and say, "You're just too involved in it. It's too dark." I feel like you're. She at one point they had a prayer group for me.
Really?
Yeah. And so
did you ever have any spiritual warfare? Or?
Yeah, and that's what I was dealing with, was writing this truth about how our spiritual warfare is that, but I was being attacked the whole time, and so our marriage was never in jeopardy, anything like that, but it was Satan was really not wanting this book to come out. And so, long story short, in the midst of writing this book, I had it turned into my editors. I spent a lot of money on it too, by the way. And so one day it was on April, and I just felt like I'm going to go out. It's a beautiful day. I'm going to go walk. I plugged into some music, piano music, and I went for a walk, and I just got inspired. You know what? It would be fun to write a love story. And so I came back, I scribbled out what I wanted to write, and in 3 weeks I wrote Fields of Alicia. And it was about so my Alicia, her dad named her after his favorite hayfield, Alicia Bermuda.
Okay.
She was named after grass.
Very sentimental.
Yeah. And so anyway, but the story is not about her. It was about a rodeo girl meeting a Manhattan composer, and love story just entwined. And her, the main character, Maddie, her dad, was just the wise person in the book, and just shared a lot of wisdom. You know, and basically, and in one part of the story, he tells her, he says, you can judge a man's character by his actions. If you'll watch his actions, you'll know what his character is, and that's what you need to. That's who you need to marry, is somebody with great actions.
Yeah.
And so I wrote it in 3 weeks. It was kind of a lengthy book. It was about 70,000 words. And I gave it to one of my editors, and I said, hey, read this and tell me what you think. And 3 days later, I had a publisher call and say, hey, we want to publish your manuscript, which I thought they were talking about the demon book.
Yeah. The one you poured your life into.
So I was so excited about, all my money went to that one, and my life went to that one, and all these prayer groups had been praying over me for that book. And he said, no, the love story. I was like, okay. And so that's how I started writing love stories, was that off of that one book right there, off of Fields of Alicia. Micah was published, by the way, and it tanked.
Jeez.
It's no longer available.
Were you ever resentful of that? Or?
No, not at all. No. Not at all. I loved writing the love stories. I'm very Hallmarky. I'm the Hallmark guy. I love Hallmark shows. Alicia's Rambo. I'm Hallmark. And so
I kind of see that.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. And so, I've written, I don't know, a dozen stories now.
And so where does that come from? Like, how did you, were you like someone who read like a bunch of like those kinds of novels, or did you read love stories often? Like, how did you just have the premise to come up with Fields of Alicia and like the background of the stories and characters? And I guess there was probably a symbolism in there. It's like, how did all of that, where did all that come from?
I don't know. I don't know, because I didn't read. I only read 3 books in high school, and one of them was The Outsiders. S.E. Hinton wrote The Outsiders, which I actually finally got to go visit that house this past year. And so, and she was an inspiration to me, but I was not academic. I didn't read. I didn't consider myself artsy at all. Now, I had an imagination. You know, and writing helps me with my imagination. I have, adult ADHD. Had it when I was a kid, And so, but Fields of Alicia was kind of a different story, to where a young girl could overcome death from her husband. The story starts right out of her losing her husband in a hayfield accident. And she's got a little girl. And so Allie is a little girl, Alicia. And so, and then you've got this Manhattan composer who has just been in the arts industry his whole life, been in the music industry his whole life, and has never found that love. And so I put them on an island together and just kind of let it happen. So as a writer, it was fun because it just happened.
Yeah.
I don't consider myself a writer. I consider myself a storyteller. And so when I make these characters, I just let them happen. And so in these stories, things just come to life. You know? I do think it's delivered in a sense. I think God has a lot of messages through this. I think there's a lot of people that have had to, have dealt with death, have dealt with a second love. It's so hard for me to summarize a story or talk about inspirations, but
I guess that's just what they call the muse. Like, it just comes to you and brings you whatever you're going to write.
It does.
So how'd you get to Shreveport?
So being in Arkansas, we really just ran out of time in Arkansas. We had run through, with Young Life, there is a lot of people that have stayed in their areas for a very, very long time, but we just felt like it was our time in Arkansas to move on. And Pat Day here at the church, I knew Pat back when I had the hunting and fishing store. So years prior. So when he first came to Shreveport, he and I were friends, and we would fish together and we'd hunt, or I'd take him hunting. And so, and he knew that I was in student ministry.
Yeah.
And so he had actually asked us years before we came to come here. and head up the student ministry. And we just had obligations in Arkansas. And so when our time had run out of Arkansas, we decided, let's move back home. Let's help with our parents, and let's travel from home. I'm still writing. And Alicia was going back to school for her doctorate. And so that was our plans. Well, I was in Texas doing something. I was driving back, and Pat called me on the phone. He goes, "Hey, I hear you moved back to town." And I said, "You heard correctly." And he said, "Come to my office. Where are you?" I said, "I'm actually on the interstate." And he said, "Good, stop by my office." And he hung up on me.
Sounds
I called Alicia, and I said, "Pat just called." She goes, "He's going to offer you a job." And I said, "Probably so," because we knew they didn't have a youth pastor at that time here. And she said, "Well, go hear what he has to say." And so I stopped by. And literally in the parking lot here at the church, I told God, I said, "This is how it's going to go down. I'm going to go listen to what Pat has to say, but I'm not going to make any decisions. I'm going to let Alicia make all the decisions." So I came in and sat down with Pat, and he goes, "You know why you're here?" I said, "Yeah, you don't have a youth director." He goes, "And I want you and your wife to be here, both of you to be here." And he said, "I want you to pray about it, but I don't have one, and we're getting into the fall right now." I said, "Well, I'll have to let her decide." And so, I don't know, Pat probably called her before I got home. But I got home, and she said, "Well, what's he want?" I said, "He wants to hire us both." And she started crying.
Really?
I was like, "God, this is not how this was supposed to go down." I know why she's crying.
Yeah.
And she goes, "We're not done. We're just not done with kids." I said, "Okay." I said, "We're going to start all over again. There's 0 youth group right now." And that was Pat's thing. He was like, "You can't fail. There's no youth group."
You can't fail.
And so that's how we started back here, And Pat loves to tell the story about we hired Lee to get to Alicia. We didn't want Lee. We wanted Alicia. We knew who was the passionate person, which we both are.
Yeah.
But that's how we started here. And it's funny, yesterday, so our first week here, 2 boys got hurt in football. That was Garen Hargan blew out his knee in a game. He played for Captain Shreve. And Dixon Poyer broke his arm playing 8th grade football. And so I went and met Garen in the hospital. And he and I became very close after that. And then I went and met Dixon in the hospital. Neither one of them knew that I was even in the hospital because they're still under the influence of pain medicine.
Yeah.
2 days later, Dixon and his mother come to the office to thank me for coming up to the hospital. And Dixon's in a cast. And I said, "Hey, you want to start a small group, a breakfast group?" And Dixon was like, "Yeah, let's do that." I said, "We'll put together some guys and we'll meet once a week." And he put together 6 guys, and we met for 5 years.
Good.
Every week, Thursday at Strong's. And so this past Thursday was our last one. And so Dixon spoke in church this past Sunday and gave his celebration of life of what the church meant to him.
Yeah.
And so it's not Lee and Alicia, it's just what God does through us, to help young people hear the truth. Because there's a lot of lies out there.
Yeah. Very true. Man, we're so grateful for you. And now you're in men's and family ministry.
Yeah, men's ministry. I'm still dealing with children. They're just older and got more expensive toys. So.
Oh, I love it. And so, like, what are your thoughts? Because, I think you're coming in the same kind of situation where there really wasn't much of a men's ministry to pick up, and you're more just putting pieces together. So what's your vision for the men's ministry and the family ministry? Because I don't even know, like, in the years that I've been here, I don't know if we've had a family ministry.
It's been a while.
Yeah.
But yeah, you have.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
It was Jonathan Beck.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Jonathan Beck was over family ministry and did a fantastic job because some of his leaders now are helping me in that area. So, men's ministry, the biggest thing for the men's ministry is that men need and should be the spiritual leaders of their families.
Mm-hmm.
And so we do a lot of events, and but it's really the Bible studies or the prayer times or some of the retreats or weekends that we do is when we really get to sit down and hear what God has to say toward men for leading their families, and is being the spiritual leader of the household.
Yeah.
And I do tell families all the time, because sometimes that might upset some of the moms, because the moms are getting the kids up on Sunday mornings, the moms are feeding the kids on Sunday mornings, they're getting them dressed to go to church, and so. But that's not the leadership that I'm talking about. The leadership I'm talking about is the modeling leadership. Is when you get older, you can look back and say, my dad was a godly man. Why was he a godly man? I don't know. He just was. That's the answer it should be, because that means that dad lived a godly life so much that his children could see God through him, but might not have the true examples. It could be because he treated people kindly. He treated people with respect. He was selfless. Maybe he prayed out loud over meals. Maybe he told the Christmas story every Christmas Eve. I don't know. It could be so many different things other than waking up kids to get ready for school.
Yeah.
Or for church. Or forcing them to go to a youth group or whatever that might be. But it's taking back that leadership. For men to take over the leadership. And so a church that has a strong male leadership has a strong congregation, period.
Yeah.
Family ministry is just as beautiful as men's ministry, because you get to deal with a family in whole of competing with the secular world.
Yeah.
And so families are busy, they're stressed, and they don't have time for anything. And so what I would love to see in family ministry is that we move from the mentality that we can't go to church because we're busy with baseball to we can't go to baseball because we're busy with church. That's what we want to do.
Yeah, like realigning where your community needs to be.
Yes. I tell parents all the time, your number one job is your child's spiritual life. Not school, not sports, not music, not dance. None of those things matter. Their spiritual life is your number one job, to make sure that they have a spiritual life with God.
Yeah.
Can't control it.
No.
There's a lot of kids that just don't believe it and move on and stay lost. And that's not a parent's fault. What a parent's fault is not giving them the opportunity to hear the gospel, the truth.
I think that's where a lot of people, myself included, are scared, because you want to raise your kids in the church and you want them to come to trust Christ as Savior one day, but you don't have control over that, and it's terrifying to think, what if they don't? And if they don't, was it because of me? Like, it wasn't something that I did. And so I think what you're saying is like so important, that number one, like as a father as well, like making sure that you are the spiritual head of the household. And then with family ministry, like doing everything you can as a family to prioritize your kids' spiritual growth. And like you said, not controlling it, but just making sure it's a priority. So that if that day comes, unfortunately, when they choose to walk away, that you've done everything you can. And obviously it's not like they make one choice and they walk away forever. There's always grace and prayer that they come back one day and they return to what you put in their hearts.
Yeah, for you and your girls, it would be like if somebody asked your girls, how's your dad? He's a godly man. How's he a godly man? I don't know. He just is. What about those times when he made you leave your cell phone at home and y'all went for a hike? Oh, yeah, that's right. He talked about God during that time. And it's those things of taking technology out of the kid's life for dads.
Yeah.
They can go kicking and screaming for a few minutes, but to be able to leave technology behind and go hiking with your kid and just talking about God. And I ask dads all the time, have you taken your child's hands, your teenager's hands, and prayed out loud with them? And that answer is, 90% times no. You better start doing it.
Yeah.
I had one dad come to me and he said, I started doing that because of something. I didn't even realize I said this, but wouldn't you want to be the first man to pray with your child out loud, or would you want a youth director to be the first man to pray with your child out loud?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's convicting, because I think a lot of people sometimes look at the church as the spiritual direction for their kids. Like they are depending on the church for the spiritual formation of their kids. And the church's responsibility, or it's the church's responsibility, instead it's the parents. Like the church is there to reinforce what you're teaching and should more be a resource for parents' spiritual development so that they can pour into the kids.
Yeah, church is supportive. Supports the families.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. One of my coaches, so I led coaches for a long time. One of my coaches said, he said, I never realized how close my dad was with God until one day I walked in and he's on his knees. I walked in his bedroom. He's on his knees and he's crying. He thought somebody died. He goes, Dad, what's going on? Who died? Who died? He goes, nobody died. He goes, well, what are you doing? He said, I'm praying. He goes, well, why are you crying? He goes, because I'm praying for you.
Goodness.
And Coach Green walked back out of the room, and he said that impacted his life right there. Coach Green just left his principal job now to be a superintendent over many high schools in Arkansas. So you've got this godly man up there that's leading these high schools because of his dad was crying on the floor praying for him.
Yeah. Man, I love it. It makes me think. I had a conversation this weekend. Usually whenever I meet guys or talk to guys who are like their kids are grown and out of the house, I'll ask them for advice because, I've got a 2-year-old and a 7-month-old. And I'll always ask like if they have any advice because there's obviously something I'm going to miss. But what he said this weekend was something that hit me hard. He said, I wish I was more intentional about my spiritual leadership of my family, because I get to sit around with my kids like they all live like 1 street over, 2 streets over, and they're all really close and we hang out all the time. And there's a slight regret in that when we're all together and when we're all talking about like childhood and them growing up, it's all funny stories and, all stuff that, is entertaining, but there's never a story of my leadership as a Christian father in the home. And he said that's one thing that I'm having to work on now. Like I'm having to make those memories now, and I'm having to be that Christian leader now because I've had to listen to all these stories or the lack of stories of Christian leadership as a father. And so that was just super convicting to me, and I was very grateful that he said it because, that's obviously not something that would be easy to say as a Christian and then having raised kids. And so anyway, that's just...
It's all in God's timing too. We talked about God's time this morning in one of our teenage breakfast groups. And it's, God doesn't work on time. I say God's timing. There's no such thing. God doesn't have time. But this man's grown sons can hear his story, hear him saying how he didn't do that and how he wishes he had. And those kids can just say, well, we're at that stage now, so we just will. Yes, it all starts at home. It all starts with the parents.
I love it. Super grateful for you, Lee.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you. So enjoyed being here.
Yeah. Anything else you want to talk about or anything coming up the folks need to know about?
There's a lot coming up, but I mean, just we try to communicate best we can. Men's ministry communicates, family, student ministry for our church families. Just watch emails and weeklies and
Okay. So if people are wanting to find out about what you're doing, the best place to look is emails and First Weekly.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And if they want to get, or the emails that are going out, are those, like, is there a list that they need to subscribe to, or
If they've ever visited the church or they're a member of the church, they should be getting them. But if they're not, let us know and we'll get them. Yeah.
All right.
So.
Okay. Well, thank you, Lee. Thank you for being here, and thank you for all that you do.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
All right, guys. We'll talk to you next time.